The Swami-s of Chitrapur, an illustrated series in 10 episodes based on the Guruparampara Charitra.
Many years ago, as the Saraswati river started drying up, the Saraswats started migrating from Kashmir to other parts of India. Some travelled down towards Rajasthan, Gujarat, and a few finally arrived in Goa to stay. To escape religious persecution, from Goa, they had fled to the southern part of India. By 1708 CE, they had settled in the areas around Nagar in Karnataka. The Saraswats, who now lived in the kingdom of Nagar, were highly educated and enjoyed eminent positions in the king's court. Soon, envy reared its head amongst the local people.
Something has to be done to quell the Saraswats' growing authority.
We must complain to our king.
These Saraswats call themselves Brahmins, but they neither have Mat nor Guru. And yet they hold such important positions at court?
The king said to the Saraswats,
"Introduce me to your Guru, failing which I will have to relieve you of your positions and titles."
The Saraswats were in deep turmoil.
We must pray at the temple of Mahabadeshwar in Gokarn for a guru. Only Lord Shiva can save us now.
After 7 days of prayers, Gayatri Purushcharan, and fasting, a Saraswat elder had the divine vision of Lord Bhavani Shankar. A clear voice rang out,
"Wait at Koti Tirtha. A sannyasi will arrive from the north. He will be your guru."
The Saraswats rushed to Koti Tirth and waited eagerly for their guru. It was Magha Shukla Ratha Saptami. As the sun set that day, they saw the tall sannyasi. An image of divinity approached. Wearing saffron robes adorned with rudraksh malas, bhasma and a chandana tilaka, carrying a danda and a kamandalu, and a beautiful idol of Lord Bhavani Shankar in his jhola. He strode towards them with the chant on his lips,
Narayana, Narayana, Narayana.
The Saraswats were overjoyed and fell at his feet.
Swamiji, be our guru and guide us.
Then they narrated to the sannyasi all that had happened. The sannyasi said,
"It was Lord Bhavani Shankar's Adesh that I come to Koti Tirtha. Do not be afraid. I will be your Guru."
Filled with joy, the Saraswats carried their guru in a decorated palki in a ceremonious procession to the Uma Maheshwar temple and ordained him as their first Mathadipati, His Holiness Parijnanashram Swamiji. The Saraswats, along with Swamiji, met the king. At the court, the king, still doubtful, said,
Bring a letter of recognition and acknowledgement from the Swami of Sringeri Mutt. That will quell all my doubts.
The Saraswats were troubled by the king's statement. But Swamiji was calm and composed.
I have a lot of affection for the Sringeri Swami, and I welcome the opportunity to meet him.
Parijnanashram Swamiji went with a few Saraswats to the Sringeri temple of Shardamba, but found the doors of the temple closed for them. Swamiji was unperturbed. He said,
If I cannot have Devi Shardamba's darshan, I will sit at the closed temple doors and worship her right here.
Such was the power of Swamiji's tapas that it drew the Devi's splendor towards him. That night, the Sringeri Swami dreamt of Devi Shardamba. He awoke, startled. She said, Lord Shiva had arrived at the mutt today, but the temple doors were closed for him. This has saddened me tremendously, and so I will leave with him. The Sringeri Swami readied himself and went straight to the temple. He was aghast at what he saw.
Why, the idol has lost all her radiance. A great soul has indeed not been given due respect.
Soon, the Sringeri Swami went to meet Parijnanashram Swamiji. He needed no other proof when he saw the Devi's radiance shine on Parijnanashram Swamiji's countenance. The Sringeri Swami gave Parijnanashram Swamiji gifts of cloth. He then said,
Please excuse the transgression, Swamiji. I appeal to you to come to the mutt and restore the Devi's splendor.
Swamiji smiled.
No transgression has taken place. Bhavani Shankar is the giver, he is the taker. The idol of the Devi will definitely shine with the same brilliance as before.
At the temple, Swamiji performed an anushthan and appealed to the Devi to shine in her original splendor. The Sringeri Swami was overjoyed to see the Devi as she had always been. He showered Swamiji with all the emblems that proclaimed his greatness: the Chhatra, Chamar, and other Math Bhushanas, the Birudavali, and the right to an Advi Palki. He also gave Parijnanashram Swamiji a letter of recognition and acknowledgement. The strong and loving relationship between the Swamis of the two mutts remains so even today. Back in Nagar, overwhelmed by what had transpired in Sringeri, the king fell at Swamiji's feet.
Do forgive me, Swamiji. I have erred.
The compassionate Swami blessed the king. The Saraswat soon built a mutt at Bhandikeri in Gokarn for Swamiji to reside. With Swamiji's blessings, the Saraswats continued to thrive at the king's court. They sought Swamiji's guidance on many matters, and they benefited by the pravachans he gave. Their love for their guru deepened and their connection to the mutt strengthened. Years later, the devotees requested Parijnanashram Swamiji to take a shishya. Swamiji agreed to their request. The Saraswats approached Krishnaya Kulkarni of the Haritakers.
Your only son Martu is most suited to become the Shishya Swami. Please do give your consent.
Krishnaya Kulkarni agreed. The first Shishya Swikar took place on Chaitra Shuddha Purnima, 1720 CE. The Shishya was named Shankarashram. 14 days later, on Chaitra Krishna Chaturdashi, His Holiness Parijnanashram Swamiji Prathama took Mahasamadhi. The Samaj had had Swamiji's divine presence amongst them for 12 years. Parijnanashram Swamiji's Samadhi Sannidhi was consecrated in Bhandikeri Mutt, Gokarn.
स्नान जप निगमादि संस्तुत मौन यम नियमादि सकल ध्यान धारण वर समाधि ज्ञान योग दृढ़ व्रत ज्ञान वारिधि सकल शास्त्र विशारदाद्वय विषयक अज्ञान तिमिरादित्य सुपरिज्ञान वर गुरवे नमः।
The Samaj grieved the passing on of Parijnanashram Swamiji Prathama, but took heart in the comforting presence of Shankarashram Swamiji Prathama, the newly ordained Mathadipati. As the years passed, Swamiji's wisdom and learning drew the respect of many. They listened eagerly to his pravachans and also sought his guidance on matters of daily life. Devotees invited him home, where they performed Pad Puja and offered him bhiksha. A devout Brahmin of Banki Kodla used to wait at the roadside every day to bring the first passerby home to serve him lunch. One day, he said to his brother,
Anna, shall we invite Shankarashram Swamiji home to stay?
Why? That will be too much trouble. Our bhakti is enough.
This saddened the Brahmana. The next day, he was surprised to see Swamiji at his doorstep.
Swamiji, will you come home for bhiksha today?
Of course, my child.
As he served the bhiksha, he said,
Swamiji, we will be blessed if you spend the day with us.
Swamiji smiled. The Brahmana left the room for a few moments. When he returned, Swamiji was not there. He looked around anxiously for Swamiji. Then he went to the Gokarna Mutt. He asked the Archaka.
Where is Swamiji?
The Archaka said,
Swamiji has just had his bhiksha. He is in his room. He's been in the mutt all day.
What?
The Brahmana went back to his home and narrated the episode to his brother. The brother was ashamed. The brothers arrived at the mutt and fell at Swamiji's feet seeking forgiveness. Swamiji blessed them and assured them that he would visit them one day. A poor artist devotee desired to invite Swamiji to his home for bhiksha. One night, both he and his wife dreamt of Swamiji.
I will be coming to your home. Offer me only your bhakti, mana and vani as kanika.
Taking it to be a vision, the artist went to Swamiji to invite him.
Of course I shall come for bhiksha. I want no kanika. Serve me what you usually eat.
The artist joyfully went home to prepare for the visit. There was much excitement. Swamiji had arrived at the artist's house. The artist, with great reverence, performed Swamiji's Pad Puja and offered him karnika of 4 annas. Then he served Swamiji the simple and delicious meal that his wife had cooked. Swamiji stayed with them the whole day. 3 days later, a wealthy man commissioned the artist a few paintings and gave him a princely sum of 1,000 rupees.
It is Swamiji's grace alone that has changed my fortune.
The artist went straight to the mutt. He offered the entire amount to Swamiji.
May Lord Bhavani Shankar bless you, my child.
Swamiji took 5 rupees and lovingly gave the rest back to the artist as his prasada. In time, the artist became well known and wealthy. He invited Swamiji again, and this time he celebrated the event with great pomp and festivities with all the villagers. Swamiji travelled vast distances to reach out to the Samaj. Unfortunately, not everyone in the Samaj understood or appreciated Swamiji's efforts. When Swamiji reached Bhatkal, the local Saraswats paid no heed to Swamiji.
What a shame! There is no one here to greet Swamiji.
Swamiji was saddened.
Swamiji, you look very tired. Let us return to Gokarna.
As they passed Shirali, Swamiji's health worsened. The devotees decided to stay in Shirali to attend to him. The concerned Saraswat elders appealed to Swamiji to take a shishya. Swamiji refused.
I do not want my shishya to suffer the disrespect of the Samaj as I have had to do. But do not worry. Practice Swadharma. Bhavani Shankar will protect you.
Where will we find a site for the Samadhi?
A householder approached the Saraswats. His name was Nagarkatti.
A family elder has pledged to give our home to Swamiji. It is right here in Chitrapur.
The Saraswats were greatly relieved. 37 years after he had become the Mathadipati, Swamiji took Mahasamadhi in 1757 CE, Ishvara Samvatsara, on Ashwin Shukla Shashti. The rites were performed by a visiting sannyasi from the north. A shrine for the Samadhi was consecrated in the place so selflessly offered, and an idol of Bhavani Shankar was installed. This is the very place which we fondly refer to as the Shirali Mat. The Samadhi shrine of Shankarashram Swamiji Prathama is known as the Hodi Samadhi.
नित्यतृप्त निराहार नित्य शुद्ध निराकार सत्य नित्य मामव नित्य सचिद्रूपक तत्वनिधि तत्त्वार्थनुत जन मुक्तिदायक वंदित स्तुत्य गुरु शंकराश्रम पर तत्वमूर्ते रक्ष माम्.
Shankarashram Swamiji Prathama had entered Mahasamadhi without taking a Shishya. The Samaj was without a Guru once again. Devotees mourned their loss. Seeing that the Chitrapur Mutt had no spiritual heir, the Nagar king summoned his officers.
Seize the Mutt property and its assets.
Two subordinates forced their way into the Samadhi shrine. The Shivalinga over the Samadhi was made of mud. The two men tried to destroy it, first with water and next with force. The Archaks were horrified. But the Linga would not be destroyed and remained firm. The men were frightened. They left the shrine hurriedly and ran to the officer to report what had happened. Later that night, the two men threw up blood and died. The Saraswats went to the king.
We are in search of a worthy heir to Shankarashram Swamiji. Please do not seize our mutt.
The king was shaken by what had happened earlier.
The mutt will be seized if you are unable to find a guru.
There was no time to lose. A Saraswat elder came up to the worried devotees.
I know of a tapasvi from Kolur who is from the Shirali Pandit family. He had been initiated into the spiritual path by Shankarashram Swamiji himself.
The Saraswats went to Kolur. Seeing the Mahayogi, they fell at his feet. They narrated to him what had happened and then begged him, "O Swami, please be our Guru." The great soul was overcome by compassion.
Lord Bhavani Shankar has given me this opportunity to be in Shankarashram Swamiji's Sannidhi. I will come to Shri Chitrapur Mutt and be your Guru.
The Saraswats joyfully seated Swamiji in a decorated palaki. The people at Chitrapur waited in great excitement at Taribagil at the Venkatapur river. They took him to Shri Chitrapur Mutt with great pomp and ceremony. Parijnanashram Swamiji Dvitiya was ordained the Mathadipati. The Saraswats were blessed with a Guru again. The people would soon come to know their Swami to be gentle, compassionate and forgiving. Parijnanashram Swamiji Dvitiya would often spend time at Kolur, immersed in anushtans with a few retinue members in attendance. A local wealthy moneylender of Kumta was distraught. His wife had an uncontainable fever. He had tried all possible cures so far. There were no hopes of her surviving. A Chitrapur Saraswat friend said,
Parijnanashram Swamiji has been camping in Kumta for 2 days. Do seek Swamiji's grace.
The moneylender went running to Swamiji. Swamiji blessed him and gave him some mantrakshat. The man rushed home and put the mantrakshat into his wife's mouth. Soon, her fever broke.
I have just had a remarkable dream. A sannyasi touched my forehead and assured me that I would recover.
When she recovered, the couple went to perform Parijnanashram Swamiji's Pad Puja. On seeing Swamiji, the woman was stunned.
This is the same Swamiji who appeared to me in my dream.
Lakshman was a Saraswat from Bhatkal. Not spiritually inclined, he had never been to the mutt at Shirali. One day while travelling from Bhatkal to Shirali on a boat on business, he met a Saraswat friend.
Lakshman, why don't you accompany me to the mutt today?
After much debate, Lakshman agreed. On seeing Parijnanashram Swamiji for the very first time, Lakshman was overcome with joy and devotion. He fell at Swamiji's feet.
Why did I not come earlier, in spite of living so close?
A single darshan of Swamiji had changed him. He took mantra diksha from Swamiji and remained a close devotee. Parijnanashram Swamiji had led the Samaj for 13 years. The Saraswats appealed to Swamiji.
Swamiji, please appoint a Shishya. There is a worthy young candidate in the Shukla Bhatt family of Mallapur.
Swamiji was more than pleased. On the request of the Samaj, the Shishya Swikar took place in Mallapur. The Shishya was given the name Shankarashram. The Shishya Swami then accompanied the Guru Swami and his retinue to Shirali. It was Bhadrapad Krishna Ekadashi, Vikriti Samvatsara, Shalivahana Shaka, that is 1770 CE. Parijnanashram Swamiji called the Shishya Swami to his side.
Look after the Samaj as a mother would her children.
Then, blessing his young Shishya, Swamiji entered Mahasamadhi. The Samadhi Sannidhi of Parijnanashram Swamiji Dvitiya was consecrated in Shri Chitrapur Mutt, Shirali.
स्वानुभव सुखरस भरित विश्वानुरंजित पदयुग मौनि जन मातंग परम निधान सद्गुण वारिधे दीन जन कृत कलुष घन संदोहनाशक पदयुग अज्ञान तिमिर दिवाकर परिज्ञान वर गुरवे नमः।
After the Mahasamadhi of Parijnanashram Swamiji Dvitiya, Shankarashram Swamiji Dvitiya ascended the peat. He became the fourth Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt. Swamiji loved Mallapur. It was the village of his birth, where he had spent his childhood years. It was also the home to some well-established and devout Saraswat families. The quiet, divine place abounded in trees, hillocks, and pastures. The perfect place for spiritual pursuits.
a moat was constructed for Swamiji's use. Shankarashram Swamiji spent many hours in intense anusthana. He was adored for his tranquil nature and revered for his wisdom and learning. Devotees sought his counsel and looked forward to his pravachanas. They spoke of him as the avatara of Dattatreya. The villages in coastal Karnataka have always borne the fury of monsoons with non-stop rain for months on end. Swamiji, when at Malapur, no matter what the weather, would bathe in the Padgani river. But miraculously, during the monsoons, whenever Swamiji went to the river for his snana, the rains would stop. The rains would begin again only after Swamiji returned to the mutt. Some years passed. The Saraswats appealed to Swamiji to adopt a Shishya. Swamiji agreed. The young Shishya was chosen from the Talgeri family of Kandlur ancestry. The Shishya Svikar was performed with great ceremony in 1781 CE, Flava Samvatsara on Magha Shuddha Dashami. The Shishya Swami was named Keshavashram. Shankarashram Swamiji was often racked with fever and uncontrollable shivering. A householder happened to see Swamiji during his anusthana. The danda, kept beside Swamiji, was covered with the upper cloth and was shivering. The man was astounded. Later, the householder approached Swamiji and inquired about the strange phenomena he had witnessed.
My anushtans are both necessary and important. When unwell, I cannot perform my anushtans easily. So I transfer my fever to my danda during anushtan. Once I have completed my anushtan, I take the fever back.
Swamiji, why not keep the fever in the danda at all times? You need not suffer then.
I am touched by your concern for me, my child. But all mortals have to bear the effects of their prarabdha. I only do what is needed to perform my anusthana.
Shankarashram Swamiji always preferred to have paz, that is rice gruel, for his bhiksha after his anushtanas. Once, since it was the Samaradhana day of Parijnanashram Swamiji Dvitiya, the Shishya Keshavashram Swamiji instructed the cooks to not make paz that day and to quickly prepare the many dishes as are done on special occasions. Guru Swami came down for the paz to the Bhojanshala as usual and realized it had not been cooked.
Swamiji, the Shishya Swami told us to prepare the Naivedya for the Samaradhana. So we began to do that and have not cooked the paz.
That's all right. Go ahead with your work.
The Guru Swami then left the Bhojanshala to go back to his room. When the cooks dropped the vada batter into the bubbling hot oil,
Oh, why is the batter sinking to the bottom and not rising up? Check to see if the flames are strong enough.
But the flames cannot get any stronger. The oil is already very hot.
the cooks went running to the Shishya Swami in alarm.
This is nothing but Swamiji's Leela. Go to him for a solution.
The cooks rushed to Shankarashram Swamiji. Swamiji smiled.
When there is an unappeased fire in my stomach, how will the heat even reach the vadas?
The cooks went quickly to the Bhojanshala to prepare the gruel for Shankarashram Swamiji and soon served him his bhiksha. Once Guru Swami's bhiksha was done, the vadas rose in the oil, crisp and golden. It was early in the year. Though unwell, Shankarashram Swamiji had travelled from Shirali to Gokarn, crossing the mighty river Sharavati to pay his respects at the Samadhi Sannidhi of Parijnanashram Swamiji Prathama. On his way back, he halted at Kumta, where many devotees from Mallapur had come for Swamiji's darshan. They requested Swamiji to come to Mallapur and stay there to recover. Swamiji accepted the invite and went to Mallapur. A few days later, in 1785 CE, Vishwavasu Samvatsara, on Magha Shuddha Tritiya, Swamiji attained Mahasamadhi. To this day, Paz is offered every day as Naivedya at Shankarashram Swamiji's Samadhi Sannidhi at Mallapur. Devotees in difficulties offer Paz as special seva and pray for his grace. The Archak of the Swami Narsimha Saraswati temple in Narsobawadi, Kolhapur, was in deep distress. He started praying to his Swami, who was considered to be the avatara of Lord Dattatreya himself.
Swami Maharaj, my son and I are both unwell. Medicines have failed us. Please restore our family's health and well-being.
Swami Narsimha came to the Archaka in his dream.
Go to Mallapur. It is a small village near Kumta. Offer your respects to the Samadhi of the Saraswat Guru, Shrimat Shankarashram Swamiji. He is none but my own avatar.
The Archak, his wife, and their son left immediately for Mallapur. At the Mutt, they did the Pradakshina Seva, offered other sevas at the Sannidhi, and partook of the Tirtha and Prasada. They stayed for a few days in Mallapur. While there, they recovered completely. The family then joyfully made their way back to Narsobawadi. Shankarashram Swamiji Dvitiya had attained Mahasamadhi in 1785 CE. Pandurangashram Swamiji renovated the Mutt and the Samadhi Sannidhi in 1868 CE. When the stone covering the Samadhi site was shifted, the devotees who had gathered around were stunned at the fragrance that wafted from the sacred site. The flowers and the leaves of the Bilva and Tulsi placed in it 83 years earlier were still fresh. Offering tranquility and seclusion for intense anusthana, the Guru Mutt has always been a beloved kshetra to every acharya in the parampara.
ईशमदन विनाश वरदाधीश त्रैगुणरूपक दोषरहित विशेष योगाभ्यास कुमति विनाशक केशवाश्रम पूजितांघ्रि विरोष मोह विदारिताशा पाशहर शंकराश्रम सुविलास सद्गुरवे नमः.
As a young Mathadipati, Keshavashram Swamiji lovingly led the Samaj as his Guru, Swami Shankarashram Dvitiya, had done. Through his pravachans, he fostered in the Samaj not only love for God and the Guru, but also a deep sense of responsibility for the Mutt. The people discussed amongst themselves.
There should be something we can do to help in the maintenance of the Mutt.
How about a voluntary annual contribution by working Chitrapur Saraswats?
And so, the Vantiga Seva was initiated. The Mutt revenue increased, and with that, the Mutt's assets. Fields were purchased, Utsavas were celebrated. The participation of the Samaj and its connection with the Mutt grew stronger. A Brahmin and his wife lived in Murdeshwar. They would often come to the Mutt to have Swamiji's darshan and to listen to his pravachans. but something worried them. The 7-year-old son had not spoken a word. The sorrowful wife begged her husband,
"Let us go to Swamiji and seek his help."
but the husband did not want to trouble Swamiji. The wife was distraught. She wept.
"Swamiji, please heed a mother's prayer. Bless my son with speech."
That night, both husband and wife had a similar dream. Keshavashram Swamiji had blessed them.
Do not be afraid. Bring your son to me without delay. The boy will speak. Do not fear.
The next morning, they discussed their dreams. There was no time to waste. The family immediately left for the mutt. There, they fell at Swamiji's feet. Keshavashram Swamiji blessed the boy.
All will be well. Stay here for a few days.
The family members each received mantra diksha and performed various sevas. The boy was invested with the sacred thread. The family then went home. In time, the boy began to speak. He grew up as devoted to Keshavashram Swamiji as his parents. A poor devout Brahman of Mangaluru longed to have the darshan of Keshavashram Swamiji. Not having the means to travel by any other way, he began to walk from Mangaluru to Shirali. When he could walk no more, he rested under an Ashwatha tree. He dreamt of Keshavashram Swamiji applying oil to his tired, painful feet. When he awoke,
What is this I see? There's a layer of oil on my feet, and the pain and swelling is all gone.
rejuvenated, he continued on his journey to Shirali to see Swamiji. He returned home to his two brothers. His brothers treated him badly. He became weak and could not work.
You are a burden to us. Go away.
The Brahman, weak and ill, could only think of Swamiji. He went again to Shirali. Keshavashram Swamiji looked at him with love.
Stay here in the mud, in seva.
Yes, Swamiji, I will.
The man felt a new strength surge within him. The brothers heard that the man had recovered and had become strong again. They came to Shirali. Amazed at how well the man looked, the brothers marveled at Swamiji's healing power. After performing Path Puja at the mutt, the two brothers went back home. Keshavashram Swamiji had a rest house built at Talgeri. He spent the summers there immersed in anushtans. The secluded place offered Swamiji precious time in Ekant. It was the year 1804 CE. Keshavashram Swamiji was at Mangaluru. The Samaj requested that he appoint a Shishya.
Swamiji, there is a young child, worthy in every way, in the Shukla Bhatt family at Mangaluru.
Swamiji gave his consent. The Shishya Swikar took place in 1804 CE, Raktakshi Samvatsar, on Ashad Shuddha Panchami in Shri Chitrapur Mutt, Shirali. The Shishya Swami was given the name Vamanashram. The Shishya Swami spent almost 20 years under the tutelage of the Guru Swami. Leaving the Samaj and the Mutt in the able hands of his Shishya, Keshavashram Swamiji attained Mahasamadhi in 1823 CE on Margashirsha Krishna Navami. Swamiji's tenure of 37 years was from 1786 to 1823 CE. His Samadhi Sannidhi was consecrated in Shri Chitrapur Mutt, Shirali.
सुरुचि भस्म विलिप्त भाल शरण जन वत्सल सुशील दुरित गज मृगराज करुणाकर शुभंकर पूजक हर नयन माला सुशोभित तरुण तुलसी दाम भूषित भूषित परम पुरुष केशवाश्रम गुरुवरोत्तम पाहि माम्।
Vamanashram Swamiji had spent 20 years with his guru, Keshavashram Swamiji, when he became the Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt. People often came to have his darshan and listen to his pravachans. Swamiji always had a kind word for them. The people adored him. How loving, gentle, and compassionate he is. As the years passed, Vamanashram Swamiji became deeply involved in his anushtans. Many hours were spent in the divine Sannidhi of Uma Maheshwar, and the administration of the mutt was given to a person from the Shukla Bhatt family. This manager was not very competent. The mutt began to face mounting expenses. The Samaj was worried, but the people thought, how can we disturb Swamiji with these problems?
Let's appeal to Swamiji to take a Shishya.
There was one particular boy of Mangaluru who was in Swamiji's retinue. The splendor on his countenance was obvious to all. This boy, Parameshwar, was from the Nagarkar family. He was earlier in the service of a person called Devappaya doing menial work. One day, an astrologer from Malabar had come to Devappaya's house. On seeing Parameshwar pressing his master's feet, the astrologer told Devappaya,
"This boy is not ordinary. His face shows signs of royalty. Treat him with honor."
Subsequently, Parameshwar joined Vamanashram Swamiji's retinue. When Vamanashram Swamiji went to Vitla, the main archak of the Ananteshwar temple noticed Parameshwar.
He is most suited to be the Shishya Swami.
The word spread in the Samaj. And finally Swamiji was approached. People spoke highly of the boy.
"Swamiji, please appoint this boy as your Shishya."
Swamiji was very happy to give his consent. The Shishya Svikar took place in 1836 CE, Manmata Samvatsar, on Phalgun Krishna Dashami. The Shishya Swami was named Krishnashram. It was the year 1839 CE. Guru Swami and Shishya Swami were invited to stay in Mangaluru. The devotees were happy to serve them. But there were some worries lurking in their minds.
The mutt's expenses are increasing by the day, and the accounts are not being kept well. How do we handle this situation?
It would be best if Shishya Swami was given the responsibility of the administration.
When the Samaj expressed their thoughts to Vamanashram Swamiji, he was upset. His agony was not for himself, but for the people. The problem should have been brought to Swamiji's notice and his guidance sought. It did not occur to the people that in reality they were conveying that they were better equipped to handle the situation than their guru. Picking the keys of the mutt, Vamanashram Swamiji tossed them to the devotees present. He appealed to the Devi.
My work here is now complete. It is time that I come to you.
Hours were spent with Krishnashram Swamiji, the Shishya Swami, readying him for his role ahead. A few days later, Vamanashram Swamiji came down with smallpox. It weakened him considerably. The disease was highly contagious, yet there was not a single other person in Mangaluru who was infected with it. The people realized that Swamiji had brought this illness upon himself.
Forgive us, Swamiji. We have erred.
A genuine act of Kshamayachana is always forgiven.
Do not be afraid. You will not suffer the ill effects of your transgression. I have done what I had come to do. Now it is time for me to go.
Swamiji attained Mahasamadhi in 1839 CE, Vikari Samvatsar, on Kartik Krishna Navami. Vamanashram Swamiji's Samadhi Sannidhi was consecrated in Mangaluru. His tenure of 16 years was from 1823 to 1839 CE. After Swamiji's Mahasamadhi, the devotees performed the Prayashchitta Homa, a yajna of repentance. They offered the Shyala Abhishek, an Abhishek of tender coconut water. Years had passed. It was the tenure of the 8th Guru Pandurangashram Swamiji. Two Saraswats were falsely accused of registering a fraudulent document. A legal case was filed in Mangaluru. The men's reputation and careers were at stake. At that time, Pandurangashram Swamiji was camping at the Mangaluru Mutt. The distressed men came to Pandurangashram Swamiji. Swamiji advised them to pray at Vamanashram Swamiji's Samadhi Sannidhi.
Perform seva at the Sannidhi. Everything will be all right.
The men offered a Nanda Deep, did the Shyala Abhishek, and the set rituals and puja. The judge was soon transferred to Kerala and their case heard again by a new judge. They were acquitted honorably. Immediately after, the earlier judge was retransferred to Mangaluru. To this day, devotees in difficulties offer the Shyala Abhishek and keep a Nanda Deep at the Samadhi Sannidhi of Vamanashram Swamiji. Prayers for help are always answered.
वामनयन सरोज सुरुचिर कामदहन निरामये राम नाम ध्यान भूषित कामरोष विवर्जिते वाम भाग उमा सुशोभित श्याम कंधर शंकरे प्रेम रस विश्राम मानस वामनाश्रम पाहि माम्।
Krishnashram Swamiji became the 7th Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt in the year 1839 CE. He paid complete attention to the various areas of Mathadipatya as guided by his Guru Vamanashram Swamiji. He personally supervised the accounts and ensured that balance sheets were maintained impeccably. Land and other such assets increased and gold ornaments were bought for Lord Bhavani Shankar. Known as a wise and learned soul, Swamiji was often invited for auspicious events held at various temples. He placed the foundation stone of the Umamaheshwar Devasthan at Mulki and later consecrated the idol in the temple. Once, Durgappaya Nagarkatti, a poor devout man who lived in Shirali, had sought guidance from Swamiji, who gave him the Durga Saptashati and told him to read it regularly. The man took up this sadhana in earnest. In time, good fortune came his way and he became prosperous. The family continues to read the Durga Saptashati to this day. Krishnashram Swamiji often visited the Samadhi Sannidhi of his Guru in Mangaluru. It was Swamiji's 18th year as Mathadipati. Some devotees of Mangaluru appealed to Swamiji to appoint a Shishya.
Swamiji, the pious Santapaya Nagar has a son named Kalapaya. He is loving, sattvic of nature and has exceptional qualities. He would be most suited as a Shishya.
Swamiji was happy to give his consent. The Shishya Swikar took place in 1857 CE, Pingala Samvatsara, on Kartik Shuddha Purnima. The Shishya Swami was given the name Pandurangashram. A devotee had offered a gold chain to Shishya Swami to wear on the day of Shishya Swikar.
Now that the ceremony is over, do return the gold chain to the owner.
Swamiji, I wore this at the time you gave me Upadesh. I see this as your prasad, Swamiji. How can I part with something that I so connect with you?
I will give you another one, my child.
Why not give the new chain to the devotee? I'll keep this.
Eventually, the Guru Swami's direction prevailed. The chain was returned to the owner. The devotee was unaware of the sentiment the Shishya Swami had attached to the chain. Several days passed. There were problems at the devotee's home. The devotee thought,
Why is my family going through such unexpected difficult circumstances?
When the investigations revealed the story behind the return chain.
Oh, then I must go to the mutt. Shishya Swami, please accept this chain as a token of my love and reverence for you.
And so, peace and prosperity returned to the devotee's home. The Shishya Swami and the other children would often play in the courtyard of the mutt. The children would take a palki in procession. The Shishya Swamiji would also love to sit in dhyan and perform Manas Puja. A Rathotsav used to be celebrated annually in the neighboring village of Venkatapur. The Shishya Swami wanted to attend it very much.
Swamiji, do allow me to go.
There are various protocols that need to be adhered to. If a Mathadipati or a Shishya Swami were to attend, it would not be right for you to go there.
The young Shishya Swami was disappointed.
My child, why don't we have a Rathotsav here at Chitrapur itself?
Pandurangashram Swamiji's joy knew no bounds. The Ratha had to be built. Krishnashram Swamiji worked out the various rituals for the Rathotsav based on the Shastras. The days leading up to the Rathotsav were exciting. Lord Bhavani Shankar came out every evening in a palki and went to different places. The devotees were thrilled. What an opportunity to see Bhavani Shankar amongst us, and at such close quarters. What an opportunity to perform his puja and do his seva. Lakshmi the elephant, the Shishya Swami's beloved pet, led each procession in full regalia. The Samaj was joyful. The Shishya Swami was in raptures. The grand Rathotsav celebrating the magnificence of Bhavani Shankar took place on Chaitra Shuddha Purnima, 1862 CE. The day was especially auspicious. It commemorated the day when the first Guru, Parijnanashram Swamiji Prathama, adopted a Shishya. It signified the beginning of the Guru-Shishya relationship in the Chitrapur Guruparampara. What day would be more apt for Krishnashram Swamiji to show his love for his Shishya? A Vanabhojan used to be arranged on Kartik Shuddha Purnima. This was done in places far from the mutt. Lord Bhavani Shankar would be taken in a palki to the venue and would be brought back to the mutt late in the night. The streets in the market used to be lit with lamps and seva would be offered to Bhavani Shankar. The shopkeepers would come out to offer fruits, coconuts and flowers. This utsav continues till date. It It was one such Kartik Shuddha Purnima. The shopkeepers in the marketplace were upset with someone in the mutt and were averse to offer the seva. They closed their shops and went home. No lamps were lit. No shopkeeper stood out with his family to celebrate Bhavani Shankar's procession outside their shops. Krishnashram Swamiji was told about what had happened.
Lord Bhavani Shankar has enough of his own light to illuminate the world,
He exclaimed. Strangely, the marketplace caught fire. Krishnashram Swamiji sent several people from the mutt to help the shopkeepers put out the roaring blaze. Miraculously, no one was hurt and there was no irreparable damage to property. The shopkeepers realized the error of their ways and sought the Guru's and Lord Bhavani Shankar's forgiveness.
The fire was simply the effect of Prarabdha,
said Swamiji to the repentant people. 1863 CE was soon to end. Krishnashram Swamiji had led the Samaj for 25 years. The Guru Swami called the Shishya Swami to his side. After advising him on many matters, the Guru Swami said,
My child, there is no doubt that you are the avatar of Dattatreya. Lead the Samaj well.
Krishnashram Swamiji attained Mahasamadhi in 1864 CE in Rudirodgari Samvatsara on Margashirsha Krishna Paksha Ashtami, the 2nd of January. His Samadhi Sannidhi was consecrated in Shri Chitrapur Mutt Shirali. He was the Mathadipati from 1839 to 1864 CE.
क्लिष्टजन संकष्टनाशक इष्टवर्ग प्रदायक अष्टयोग सुतुष्ट मानस श्रेष्ठ मुनि जन पूजित अष्टभावा क्लिष्ट वृत्ति विशिष्ट जन परिपालक शिष्ट जन संतुष्टिद श्री कृष्ण गुरुवर पाहि माम्.
Pandurangashram Swamiji was 16 years old when he ascended the Pitha and became the 8th Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt. In the 6 years that he had been with his Guru, he had mastered the Shastras. Over the years, Swamiji set the mantra vidhis in place at the Mutt. He took keen interest in sadhaka's personal sadhana. He ensured that the Vidyarthis in the Mutt had the best teachers and facilities. The Vantiga to the Mutt had increased. This helped build the Mutt's assets. In the first few years of his tenure, Swamiji renovated the Samadhi Mutts as well as several temples. Chitrapur became an ideal village under Pandurangashram Swamiji's watchful eye. The main road was lined with trees and street lamps. Homes for the locals and a vernacular school were all constructed. Arrangements for a post office were made. A weekly marketplace was initiated where villagers could sell their products. Pillars with flat tops were erected on the roadside so that tired villagers could push the heavy loads off their heads on the pillar tops and rest for a while. Provision for drinking water for people and for animals were made. Pandurangashram Swamiji's engineering skills were well known. One of his magnificent designs was the Shiv Ganga Sarovar. a 2-story rest house was constructed at the hill close to Chitrapur for devotees who came to the mutt for Rathotsav. Swamiji planted 5 banyan trees on the hill and named the hill Panchavati. Panchavati gave Swamiji the space for long walks and hikes which he loved to do, and the space to ride his beloved horses. Swamiji travelled relentlessly through dense forests and across coastal borders to meet the people of the Samaj. People benefited by his presence, his Tirth Prasad and his guidance. Swamiji loved children and they loved him. They would flock around him to gaze at him and listen to what he wanted to share with them. There are several records of people of all communities and religions who were falsely accused of wrongdoing and were faced with legal cases or loss of their livelihood. Their prayers at Pandurangashram Swamiji's feet always resulted in fair trials and acquittals. Pandurangashram Swamiji had once fallen ill when at Mallapur, but he wanted to travel back to Shirali to perform his Chaturmasya Vrat. However, the monsoon had already set in. The people were very worried. How will Swamiji travel such a long distance in his palki in the rains? An elderly Saraswat of Mallapur said to Swamiji,
Swamiji, do offer your prayers at the Samadhi Sannidhi of the Guru Mat. I am sure it will not rain during your travel. Swamiji, the rains would stop when Shankarashram Swamiji Dvitiya would go to the Badgani river at Chandavar for his snan. Once back at the Mat, the rains would begin again.
Swamiji prayed at the Sannidhi during the noon Mahapuja, and within a matter of some time, the rain stopped. The sun came out. Swamiji left for Shirali immediately. Swamiji travelled the whole day to blue and sunny skies and camped in Honavar for the night. It was only after Swamiji had reached Shirali late the next night did the rains begin in earnest again. Whilst during his visit to Kashi, Pandurangashram Swamiji stayed at Narad Ghat. The scholars there were very impressed by Swamiji's Vidvata. Swamiji thought,
We should have a mutt in Kashi someday.
Swamiji's dream would be fulfilled one day. In 1899, the rains had failed again and famine hit the local people hard. Pandurangashram Swamiji directed that the Parjanya Vidhan be performed. 12 archaks stood in the ankle-deep water of the Shiv Ganga Sarovar and chanted the Parjanya Sukh without a break. On the third day, at around 7 p.m., the rain fell in torrents. Once a Kulkarni of Hasgani prayed for Lord Dattatreya to appear before him. His visit to all the kshetras was to no avail. Pandurangashram Swamiji appeared before him.
You have been going place to place for darshan of me when I am right here at Chitrapur.
Kulkarni rushed to Shirali. When he met Swamiji, Swamiji lovingly said,
Go inside, eat and rest for a while.
Kulkarni slept for hours. When he awoke, he saw Pandurangashram Swamiji in the form of his beloved Dattatreya. Swamiji spoke.
Now has your wish been fulfilled? Have you seen your Datta?
It was the year 1915 CE. Pandurangashram Swamiji had become very frail and ill. The Samaj had appealed to Swamiji to appoint a Shishya, but he had refused. One night, he had a vision of a sannyasi. It was an indication to Swamiji that it was time to take a Shishya. He called Haridas Ramchandra Bhatt.
Your second son Shantamurti shall be my Shishya.
Shantamurti was an exceptional child. He would wake at dawn, bathe and collect flowers. He would then run to the Gopal Krishna temple to make garlands for the Lord. He loved listening to bhajans and kirtans of his beloved Gopal Krishna. When asked if he was ready to be the Shishya Swami, he declared without hesitation, "Of course, since that is what Swamiji wants." Preparations for the Shishya Svikar were being done. The Shishya Swami needed a danda. The archaks went running to Swamiji.
Swamiji, where will we find a danda at such a short notice?
When I was given sannyasa diksha and made the Shishya 58 years ago, 2 dandas had been selected. One of them was securely tied with a thick rope to the wooden beams high up in the kitchen loft. Go look for it there.
The archaks rushed to the kitchen. No sooner had they entered than the rope broke. The dand slipped into the arms of the waiting archaks. "It is a miracle," they said, astounded. The Shishya Svikar took place in 1915. Rakshasa Samvatsara Krishna Paksha Ashtami. Shantamurti was given the name Anandashram. 9 days later, on Jeshta Shukla Dvitiya, the Guru Swami attained Mahasamadhi. Pandurangashram Swamiji's Samadhi Sannidhi was consecrated at Shri Chitrapur Mutt, Shirali. A Dattatreya idol was installed behind the linga. Swamiji's long and eventful tenure of 51 years was from 1864 to 1915 CE.
पाण्डुराद्रिनिवासकर ब्रह्माण्ड पालक शैलजा मण्डिताङ्गदिनादिशतमार्तण्ड छविपद सेवक मण्डलेश्वर निजपद जुषा खण्डल श्रीदातृ सद्गु मण्डल स्थित गुरुवर श्री पाण्डुरङ्ग नमोऽस्तु ते।
Anandashram Swamiji had a mere 9 days with his Guru before he became the 9th Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt. The first decade was mostly spent in Ekanta. Panchavati provided the space for solitude, Chintan and Anushtanas. Swamiji paid equal attention to physical exercise, yogasanas, swimming, walking and riding horses. Swami Krishnacharya Saraswati was a great influence in Swamiji's early Mathadipatya years. The Acharya explained to Swamiji the essentials of sannyas dharma and the intricacies of each shastra. In the years that followed, the connection between the Samaj and Anandashram Swamiji grew deep and strong. Swamiji was invited to many places and he drew crowds of devotees wherever he went. People looked forward to listening to Swamiji's discourses. Swamiji repaired and renovated the mutts and several temples and consecrated many idols. A library and a free reading room, free education, medical relief, a free dispensary for all greatly benefited the locals at Chitrapur. He also initiated scholarships for underprivileged students. Swamiji went on yatras to Tirth Kshetras in the north and south. The scholars who heard him speak were impressed by his knowledge of the Shastras and his capacity to explain difficult topics with ease. In 1953, Anandashram Swamiji went to Kashi and stayed at Raja Ghat. Years ago, Pandurangashram Swamiji, the 8th Acharya, while at the same ghat, had voiced his thoughts.
We must have a mutt here someday.
Several years later, in 2007, Sadyojat Shankarashram Swamiji, our beloved Guru, and present Mathadipati came to Raja Ghat. There were 3 temples and a building at the site. Swamiji opened a closed door, and there, on the wall, right in front of him was a photograph of Anandashram Swamiji. This sealed the site for the Kashi branch of Shri Chitrapur Mutt, predetermined by the Sankalpa of our Purvacharyas and their divine presence. Drought hit India in 1938. Anandashram Swamiji took the painful decision to defer the Chitrapur Rathotsav. He initiated the Sadhana Saptaha in its stead. The Samaj, saddened at the loss of the Rathotsav, rejoiced at being given a new opportunity for seva and for satsanga with Swamiji. Bengaluru Sabha invited Swamiji, and the 9 days with him was given the name Sadhana Navaha. On one of Swamiji's travels through a dense forest in Agumbe Ghat, they encountered a large tiger blocking their way. Swamiji stepped outside of his Fiat and walked to the tiger. The people in the car were frightened out of their wits. Swamiji stood calmly and in complete silence before the tiger. The tiger stood up, gazed long at Swamiji, and then strode majestically back into the jungle. Once, a letter was to be sent to Rao Sahib Gundil Narayan. When shown first to Swamiji before it was dispatched, Swamiji said,
Change the designation from Rao Sahib to Diwan Bahadur.
Diwan Bahadur was a much higher title. The words were changed and the letter sent. The following day, Gundil Narayan was informed by his seniors that he had been promoted. In 1957 CE, the Samaj requested Anandashram Swamiji to appoint a Shishya, to which he agreed. Swamiji asked Shankar Narayan and Shantabai Shukla for their son Ravindra. The young boy's horoscope was exceptional. The couple gave their consent, and Ravindra too happily agreed. Ravindra was no ordinary child. When he was in his mother's womb, she had a vision of a 7-headed serpent. When the soon-to-be parents consulted their astrologer, he declared,
Subramanya will be born to you.
One day, Ravindra noticed several large logs of wood and thick ropes in the field next to his grandmother's home in Chitrapur.
Grandma, what are they for?
They were used during the Rathotsav.
And she told him about the Teru, how it had started, and why it was deferred. Ravindra listened intently.
I will start the Rathotsav again,
he stated with determination. Ravindra would first offer some of the food that was prepared at his home to Anandashram Swamiji. Only after Swamiji accepted it would he run back home to have his meal. He would go to the mutt every evening to participate in the Deep Namaskar. He was sure of Anandashram Swamiji's darshan then. Such was the child chosen to be the Shishya Swami. The Shishya Svikar took place on March 1st, 1959 CE, on Magha Krishna Saptami Vikhari Samvatsara in Shivaji Park, Mumbai. Thousands gathered to watch the event. The Shishya was given the name Parijnanashram. Parijnanashram Swamiji received Anandashram Swamiji's continuous guidance on spiritual matters and on those of the administration of the mutt. The Shishya Swami's sadhana intensified. One day, the Devi Rajarajeshwari appeared before him. He placed her hand on his head in blessing. The young Swami was overjoyed and filled with awe. He went straight to his Guru to tell him about it. Anandashram Swamiji listened to the Shishya Swami with great joy and pride. He blessed his Shishya.
One day, you will build a temple for the Devi, and you will be a guiding light to many.
Once, the Shishya Swami was with a few people, but one amongst them was absent.
Where is he? He was to come here today.
Swamiji, the man has gone to some satsang to see Vibhuti being materialized.
The young Parijnanashram Swamiji said in surprise.
Is that all? But that can be done here too.
He materialized huge amounts of kumkum and vibhuti and poured it upon Anandashram Swamiji's padakas. When the Guru Swami was told about the incident, he summoned his Shishya and cautioned him gently.
In our parampara, we do not display these siddhis.
In the years that followed, the Guru and Shishya went on several yatras together. They were also invited to many events where they connected with the laity. The Samaj had innumerable opportunities to do seva and to listen to their discourses. Anandashram Swamiji had been on the Peetha for 51 years. It was the year 1966 CE. He was in Bengaluru Mutt. On September 16th, Bhadrapada Shukla Tritiya, Parabhava Samvatsara, a resonant Om came forth from his room. Anandashram Swamiji had taken Mahasamadhi. The Samaj mourned the loss of the gentle Guru. Anandashram Swamiji's Samadhi was consecrated in Shri Chitrapur Mutt, Shirali.
सोमशेखर ललित पदयुगतामर सरत मानसं प्रेमि जनमानस कुमुदिनी सोममिन्दु समाननं काम मोह मदादि षडरिस्तोम गिरिसुपविं कविं श्रीमदानन्दाश्रम श्री स्वामिनाथमुपास्महे.
Parijnanashram Swamiji Tritiya became the 10th Mathadipati of Shri Chitrapur Mutt on 12th October 1967. It was the auspicious occasion of Vijayadashami. Swamiji initiated several projects so that the Mutt could move towards self-sufficiency. A borewell was constructed, the Mutt farms were cultivated and coconuts grown. A school was started at Mallapur and at Chitrapur, a home Anandashram for socially and financially disadvantaged Saraswat elders. Once at Kharmat, Swamiji was on the stage giving a pravachan when the famed sannyasi Patslegaonkar Maharaj came up on stage. He took out a mess of swirling snakes from his jhola and placed it around Swamiji's neck. Panic rushed through the audience. Swamiji was unperturbed. Wearing the garland of hissing snakes, he sat silently, a smile on his lips. Patslegaonkar Maharaj prostrated at Swamiji's feet and then declared to the audience,
Your Swamiji is Shiva Avatar himself. You do not know how fortunate you are.
Swamiji loved animals and birds, and they adored him. He was keen on learning new skills. He drove a car and rode horses. An exemplary musician, Swamiji played the tabla and the harmonium and knew the intricacies of rags. Once, seeing there was none to provide the rhythm, Swamiji picked up the dholak and began to play it, much to the delight of the sadhakas present. Parijnanashram Swamiji's literary works were full of poetic beauty and infused with the fragrance of Vedanta. He wrote under the pen name Sri Harsha. Swamiji was keenly interested in science and technology. He was the first and the only sannyasi member of the Wireless Ham Radio Association. He set up a ham radio station at Chitrapur. This was mainly to call for help in case of medical emergencies in Shirali and to assist the farming communities. He set up a siren and a weather observatory too. Swamiji's various interests and forward thinking attracted and inspired the youth. He formed youth associations through which members could organize and participate in activities. Swamiji met the heads of many religious and spiritual institutions. There was always an interesting exchange of thoughts and ideas. He was always concerned about the welfare of people. Many devotees thronged the venues where he was scheduled to speak. Swamiji was dedicated to the conservation of art and culture. He brought several abandoned artifacts under one roof and established a museum at Shirali. As a child, he had declared that he would restart the Rathotsav one day. In 1973, the Ratha came out in full splendor after a gap of 35 years. Joyful and emotional, Swamiji offered the entire effort to his guru, Anandashram Swamiji. Swamiji initiated the Abhinav Sammelan to be held during the festivities of Rathotsav. Experts in various fields spoke or performed for large appreciative audiences. Many of the Samaj members had gone and settled abroad. Thirsting to listen to their guru and to be in his seva, they invited Swamiji to spend a few months with them. In the year 1979, Swamiji travelled west to the US, Canada, and to some parts of Europe. He addressed an enthralled audience on several occasions and spoke on diverse topics. Some members of the Samaj had become critical of Swamiji. The Sannidhi of the Mat and the Mathadipati are for the benefit of the Samaj, Swamiji observed. After praying for and receiving his guru's consent, Swamiji in the Mahasabha announced his decision to give up the Mathadipatya of Shri Chitrapur Mat. The natural and beautiful surroundings of Karla became the perfect place for Swamiji's residence. He built the Jnananand Ashram and was often in Ekant. A few devotees stayed with him in Seva. In the years that followed, Swamiji established the Shri Trust, the Virar School for the Handicapped, and Shanta Sukhada, a project to benefit the locals in and around Karla. People in distress often came to Swamiji. Distance did not matter when Swamiji healed the ill. Having received Swamiji's blessings, people were assured of the removal of all their troubles. It was December 1985. A young Samir Kodikal was certain that he wanted to traverse the difficult path of renunciation. He went to Chennai, where Parijnanashram Swamiji was camping, and sought his guru's guidance and blessings before taking the first step. Swamiji then threw a garland upon the youngster who had prostrated at his feet and blessed him. Samir would travel to Mount Abu, where he would be tutored by the great Samvit master Swami Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj. The young tapasvi would spend the next several years in intense sadhana. It was the year 1991. Parijnanashram Swamiji went to all the Chitrapur mats, to the temples in Goa and then to Karla. There, Swamiji explained to the architect where he wanted the Devi's Sannidhi to be consecrated and where his own Samadhi sthala. Then he went to Bengaluru. At Bengaluru, he spent some time at the Mat in the room where his guru Anandashram Swamiji had taken Mahasamadhi. On the 29th of August 1991 CE, in the home of Sri Bhalachandra Naimpalli, a reverberating Om emanated from Swamiji's room. Parijnanashram Swamiji had taken Mahasamadhi. the Samadhi Sannidhi of Parijnanashram Swamiji Tritiya was consecrated at Karla. As per the Shastras, only a sannyasi may officiate at a Linga Pratishtha ritual. It was no coincidence that Swami Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj was at nearby Lonavla for a Shiviram and readily agreed to come to Karla for the ceremony. He also performed the first puja of the Devi Durga Parameshwari. Parijnanashram Swamiji's Sanjeevani Samadhi at Karla became a Tirtha Kshetra for thousands of devotees. Parijnanashram Swamiji's Mahasamadhi created a huge void in the Samaj. Spiritually lost, sadhakas craved for the stabilizing presence of the Guru. Just as their ancestors had done almost 300 years earlier, they prayed to Lord Bhavani Shankar and performed the Gayatri Purascharans. Their prayers were soon to be answered. Members of the Samaj approached Sadyojat Swamiji. He was the young tapasvi who had first sought Parijnanashram Swamiji's blessings to take to the spiritual path, and who had then been under the tutelage of Swami Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj at Mount Abu the past several years. They appealed earnestly, "We beg you to accept the Mathadipatya of Shri Chitrapur Math. Be our 11th Guru and guide us." Swami Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj gave his approval and Sadyojat Swamiji his consent. The grateful Samaj rejoiced. On 27th February 1997 CE, Magha Krishna Panchami, Shrimad Sadyojat Shankarashram Swamiji became the 11th Mathadipati in the presence of the divine Sannidhis at Shri Chitrapur Math, Jagadguru Acharya of Sringeri and Swami Narayanashram. With the loving grace of Lord Bhavani Shankar and the revered Guruparampara, the sacred Peetha of Shri Chitrapur Math was again blessed with the divine presence of the Guru.
शिष्यवृन्दा ज्ञानतिमिरविनाशनोऽद्यद्रविवरम् शिष्टजनसङ्घातवारिधि शारदेन्दुनिभं गुरुम् धर्मरक्षणसिद्धये वरचरममाश्रममाश्रितम् ब्रह्मसंस्थितमानसं प्रणुमः परिज्ञानाश्रमम्